Good evening. This meeting is a meeting of the Medina City Schools Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. If you'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Mr. Chambers, if you'll call roll call, please.
Mr. Hilberg.
Here.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Mr. Ross.
Here.
Mr. Skidmore.
Here.
Ms. Pavlik.
Here.
Thank you.
Would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting, July 27th, 2020, and the work session, August 10th, 2020.
Second.
Are there any changes, corrections, additions to the minutes? Okay. No. Hearing none. Mr. Chambers?
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.
Are there any additions, removals, modifications to tonight's agenda? None? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Chambers?
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Sable.
Great, thank you. And before I get into my specific items, I just want to share with the community that might be tuning in this evening in an effort to try and give our community a better opportunity to comment within the meetings. We've again changed our format for comment. I appreciate everybody's patience and bearing with us as we learn these online format. Today, we actually have a Zoom set up for the public to actually come in live and comment. That is going to be available to the public once we get towards the end of the meeting with the public comment section. At that time, approximately 5 or 10 minutes before we get to that public comment section, there is going to be a link made available through the YouTube channel for community members to log on to the Zoom. When community members log on to the Zoom, I ask that you please list your name first and last, as well as your address, as is required for public comment. And I know Mrs. Pavlik will share that once we get to that section as well. First thing I want to open with is just welcoming back our staff and our students. I know some of you had the opportunity to drive past some of our buildings today. It was nice to have cars in the parking lots. We did have all of our staff return today, and we began our professional development in preparation for the opening of the school year for students. Today, we spent most of our time talking about COVID and COVID procedures in the buildings, procedures for staff to follow, as well as procedures in working within the buildings. With the upcoming week, we have ongoing professional development for the staff. It includes technology professional development, which is actually going to be led by teachers within the district. And that's in an effort to provide our teachers more skills in using the online programs and software that's available to them as we head into Online 2.0 on Monday with all of our students. In addition, we've allotted time for staff to work within their classrooms and get their lessons prepared. I know today and tomorrow they are also working on getting materials together for pickup. If parents have not heard yet about their building's pickup that information is coming very soon, and that's going to be coming from the building principals. So we're at the point in the process where we're getting into the details and the nitty-gritty, so a lot of the information coming out at this point is going to be building specific. I do have to say I've gone around and tried to visit some buildings as best I could, and our teachers and our staff really seem excited to be back. It's nice that we're able to put our foot back in the water after being away from the facilities for approximately 6 months. And I really think today was really good for everybody to be back in the buildings and in sitting in on some of the staff meetings. I know I was in a Claggett one today. I was in a few high school ones. It's really nice to see the collaboration of people working together to offer the best academics for our students. I also, since this is going to happen before our next board meeting, I do want to welcome our students back to the district as well. I recognize that it is in a online 2.0 format, but I'm confident that the parents and students are going to have a very different experience than what they saw in the spring. One of the challenges we've had in putting together the online 2.0 is creating a very structured system with more face-to-face interaction with teachers, while at the same time trying to allow some flexibility for working parents or students that don't as easily have access to things like the internet. And thus the schedule I sent out last week. That's why you see some days that are filled with face-to-face meetings, and you have other days where it's more online directed, because we heard from the survey we did in the spring that parents wanted both. So we did the best we could in order to create both. I've said before, and I think it's right in our back-to-school plan, that this continues to be a work in process. Said a couple weeks ago, this is our first pandemic, and we're learning as we go, just like with the Zoom call-in at tonight's board meeting. And we are going to continue to make adjustments, and I know it can become frustrating to some parents. I know because they've reached out to me, just that some things keep changing, and that's because we're trying to develop a better direction as we're learning what's working and what's not working. One of the things I did want to address is in terms of the high school and a return to the high school. We are seriously at this time looking at a hybrid schedule, at least for our initial return. And I did put that in my communication to parents, but I wanted to make sure that I was able to share with the board why we're thinking about that. What I charged the high school committee with is a full return with all students. And they had expressed early on concerns about bringing 2,400 students back into the high school and the ability to social distance. And my directive to them was, well, we need to see what we can do first to get all of our students back before we consider an alternative option. In my meetings today, as well as last week with the high school committee and staff, it's very apparent that there's big concerns, mostly with the cafeteria and study halls, where we'll have at times up to 300 students within a study hall. And those are issues that I have concerns, and I know our high school administration has concerns as well, of being able to appropriately social distance in those areas. The halls were a concern as well. I think they're a bigger concern for me than our high school administration, but when you have 2,400 students passing in the hallways, that's a concern. The key, like we've discussed before, is to keep them moving, and if we can keep them moving, it's safer. Dr. Kwolek is working with the committee as well as with our guidance counselors, and I know our guidance counselors have been pivotal in this, in looking at the enrollment as well as the high school schedule to see what a hybrid could look like or would look like or even would work at the high school. So no final decision has been made. We do have another step in this process, We have a leadership team that's been put together from the very get-go as we've been creating the back-to-school plans. And they are a curriculum leadership team. So the point where this needs to go in front of that curricular committee. I want to make sure we continue to work with them as we're making these decisions, especially when we're talking about the academic component. Because the committee that we have at the building level, obviously they're teachers and they're academically minded, but the committee's focus is on the safety of the building. And part of the decision we have to make is balancing the safety with what's academically best for students. We will continue to communicate with our parents and the board as we move forward and look at making decisions and start getting some game plans together. These 4 weeks in opening the year is really going to give us time to hone in, not just at the high school, but at all of our buildings, what the back-to-school procedures are going to be so that we can bring our students and our staff back in the safest way possible. Each year we work on having a motto or something that drives us throughout the course of the school year. Last year that was superheroes, and that's something that we set up specifically for our staff. This year, and I did put it more out to the community than I usually do, but I think it's fitting that our motto for this year is Be Together. And that's because our plan and our goal is to get our students back into our buildings where we can work together. Our goal and our plan is to find strategies that even if we're in an online format, we are working on having teachers being together with students face to face and having more interactions. With our community being together, I think is collaborating as we move through this pandemic experience and working with us and getting students back, which includes everybody's help out in the community in regards to wearing masks and following whatever safety protocols are in place. So this year you're going to hear quite a bit about Be Together. Ultimately, what we want out of Be Together is everybody back in our classrooms, and that's our goal. And the sooner we can do that, the better. The plan that I did send out to parents did outline how we're going to do that. And we are looking at having students back in our buildings before September ends. We have 3 soft start days that we're implementing. One is to address a concern that I've heard from a lot of principals, and I've heard from even more parents, and that's allowing our students that are new to buildings an opportunity to transition, get our 6th graders in, get our 9th graders in, get our kindergartners in, so they have a chance to learn the building. So one day is dedicated to new students, and then the next 2 days we'll split up the alphabet. And the goal with splitting up the alphabet is that our buildings are all labeled with one-way hallways, non-access areas, and our students need to be familiar with those procedures as well as cleaning within the classroom. So those other 2 days is so that our teachers, our staff can work with them. I do want to, in our opening with staff today, send out a special shout out in particular to our paras. In walking, especially through the high school here today, they were working very hard today, putting up arrows and one-way signs and stickers to direct our students upon their return. And that was a lot of work, especially in a building this size. So I appreciate the way people are stepping up in different ways to help our students return to school. Chromebook and material pickup I already mentioned, so I'm going to be quick with this one, but communication should have come out from building principals or will be coming out very soon. I believe at the elementary buildings, and I'm speaking generally because each building's a little bit different, but they're all doing their pickups in late afternoons or evenings, and the plan is to have our elementary teachers there on a rotation, so students have the opportunity to see their teachers. At the middle schools, I know that they do have pickups scheduled for Thursday and Friday. I think that starts in the afternoon and goes into a portion of the evening. And then here at the high school, we're talking a bookstore kind of format. There will be stations set up for math, language arts, art, and students will come in with their schedules and visit the stations and get whatever materials that they do need. I do know from talking to teachers today that a lot of them are really making an effort to not utilize things like textbooks. Most of those items are available online, and for safety and for ease with our students, because they're not going to be able to use lockers when they return. We're trying to lighten the load in terms of books and supplies. The last thing I want to mention tonight is an update on Medina High School. I did send out some communication to our staff, and this occurred mid to late last week. And Mr. Harrison's resignation is on the agenda tonight, and I want to start off by congratulating him. He was board approved last week as the new superintendent at Buckeye, so he's going to be just moving next door. A real loss to Medina and Medina High School, a real gain to Buckeye. I do feel like Jeff is ready to make that move, and Jeff is going to do an outstanding job in leading that district. As we move forward here in Medina, we want to make sure that we're making the right choice in regards to who's going to be taking over the high school. So Jim and Chris and I have had a lot of conversation on the direction to go. Chris is serving, Dr. Kwolek is serving as the interim high school principal. My goal is to have that be as short of a time period as possible. She's taking a lot on. As you know, we've been providing some extra assistance to our business department due to personnel reasons, and Chris has played a major role in that, and now having the opportunity to go in and help out at the high school as well. I already, just in one day, seeing high school staff meetings, her leadership here at the high school on day one has just been outstanding. The collaboration and cooperation of staff members and administrators in the buildings, recognizing the situation here and their help, has been very much appreciated. I know Chris got a warm welcome this morning from the secretarial staff with flowers, and so I know they're excited for her to be here in the building and working with the high school staff. In terms of long-term for this school year, we are going to be posting the position. I don't know that we're going to be moving forward with an actual hire or looking at an interim to get us through this year. And the reason why I say that is because typically you're hiring a high school principal in the early spring, and you have a pretty lengthy interview process that includes staff as well as parents, because it's a big position to fill, and we want to make sure that we have an appropriate system in place in order to go through that. The ability of candidates to be available, though, is where I'm concerned. With school years already starting, the ability for people to get out of contracts is a concern. But the goal is to get an interim person in here. I know I've run a high school as an assistant superintendent and played double role myself, and it's a lot of work. It's hard, especially when you're talking about running a facility like the high school in order to balance those two things. So fortunately, we've got a great administrative team, and everybody's stepping up in their own way in order to help us out, and I'm confident we're going to have an outstanding person in place, and we want to make sure it's the right person. Our high school is bigger than a lot of districts, just the one building. So we want the right leadership in that building. Thank you.
Good evening. Your district bank balance increased by $17.5 million in the month of July to $91 million. This balance is $1.2 million below last year at this time. The general fund revenues were above last July by $2.5 million. All funding sources except for state foundation funds, which are monies that we get from the state on a monthly basis, account for this increase. The general fund expenditures were above last July by $1.2 million. Personnel, benefits, supplies, and other expenditures contributed to this increase. but the personnel relates to a third pay that we had this July as opposed to 2 pays last July. The sales tax fund balance is up to $3.6 million. The district spent $570,000 in July. The largest portion of the expenditures was on the roof replacement here at the high school and also bleacher replacement here at the high school. The Recreation Center capital fund balance is up to $203,000. The district spent $1,200. The city reimbursed us $2,200. The district received $63,000 in investment income for July. The total collected for the current fiscal year is approximately $75,000 below last fiscal year at this time, and we all know why. The district has a general fund true days cash estimated to be 285 days. This is up from June by 53 days and below last year by 17 days. Reason it's up is we received our property tax advances here in July. I'd also like to touch upon the temporary appropriations. We increased temporary appropriations for the emergency levy, for the 018 public school support, for the 200 student activity, and also for our auxiliary services. And we received monies for the coronavirus relief fund. Your 018 and 200 are mainly due to high school increases in their appropriations. Your emergency levy, we increased with additions that we had earlier in July. And then, let's see, again, we received monies. Your auxiliary services, we moved monies over. Last year when we closed out the accounts, they had balances left over, so we moved those appropriations over so they could use the monies this year. Questions? Thank you.
At this time, is there any board communications?
Before we do that, I just had a question for Aaron. And I know you didn't cover this. Is there any update on the fans that come into the athletic events? Any update?
Yeah, there is an update in terms of the fans. The governor just last week released expectations and requirements for having sports return. Fans are going to be very limited at all of our athletic events. Typically, I'll use football as an example. Students are given anywhere between 2 to 4 tickets in order to have their family there. In terms of the stadium, a lot of time was spent to tape off the bleachers to ensure appropriate spacing within the stadium. So tickets are going to be very limited to family members, at least for the meantime. What we have done is Mr. Hodke has worked to have cameras installed at our facilities. So parents, families will be able to get a subscription, an online subscription to watch all of our games. I think that's somewhere around $15 to $20 a month in order to have that subscription. So actually for some families, I know it's not like being there, but it actually saves money if you look at it, attending several football games. So we are making an effort in order to have those athletic events available for the community and for people outside of families as well. What's probably the most unfortunate part is not being able to have our swarm and our students there. I mean, that's such an important part of the culture, especially here at the high school. We're hopeful we can move through this pandemic stuff and have our kids back at our events as soon as we can.
Mr. Sable, will visiting fans be allowed in our facilities? I know some districts were limiting whether it just be home fans versus visitors.
Yep, and part of that is a league decision, and our league did decide to allow visiting fans. So we are providing the visiting schools with a limited amount of tickets, and it's the same thing as what we're doing here in the school. Those tickets are allocated for family members.
Thank you. Any other questions on communications? Okay. Are there any board communications?
I have two. Number one, I just want to echo what Aaron said about Jeff. Actually, my frustrations and congratulations. The frustration, obviously, is because he's a great educator, and we're going to lose him. So I'm frustrated about that. But when you're good, you get noticed and you move to the top, just like Jeff did. And very proud of him, and just want to wish him all the best. I know he's going to do very well at Buckeye. And the other thing was, since we own the building at the rec center, every year the Gazette does a contest, best of the best, and the Medina Rec Center won for best rec center in the county and for best summer camp for kids. I just wanted to mention that because we own the building and because we have a great relationship with the city and they operate it. So I just wanted to shout out for that. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I didn't know Jeff for very long, but I'd always heard good things, and we had some great conversations, and it's going to be a loss for Medina, but definitely an asset for Buckeye. So congratulations and best of luck to him.
A couple of things. I did want to mention that at our last policy committee meeting, which I think was July, we talked about the social media committee that had been assembled. I believe it included members of the teaching staff, coaches, parents, and I don't remember if there were students or not on that social media, no, but parents, teaching staff, coaches, and administrators. And they did develop, the goal was to try to determine which apps can be used to communicate information to parents for athletics and extracurricular events. So that committee did come together. I know we have a policy tonight for social media. That doesn't cover it because that committee developed more of what the guidelines are going to be using social media consistently across the district. So I know we've talked about that several times at some of our meetings. I just wanted to give that update to the board. And also echo the comments about Jeff. I want to congratulate Jeff on his being superintendent. I want to congratulate Buckeye since they are going to have a great superintendent in him, I believe. And I do wish Jeff lots of success. His family is local. He has students. I believe they're both going to be in the high school this year. So hopefully we'll see him at some functions. But good luck, Jeff.
Again, I would like to congratulate Mr. Harrison. He has been in the district as long as I've been, actually longer, I believe. But I've known him since my son had started kindergarten, and I have seen him grow as an individual and as an administrator, and I definitely wish him the best of luck over at Buckeye. Definitely our loss is Buckeye's gain for sure. And I would imagine that his children are probably breathing a little sigh of relief that their dad is not going to be their high school principal. So, congratulations, Jeff. Best of luck.
If it please the board, item number 1, Treasurer's Report. It's recommended the Board of Education approve the July 2020 Treasury Report. Item number 2, revised temporary appropriations for 2021 school year. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the revised temporary appropriations. Item number 3, a then and now purchase order. It's recommended the Board of Education approve the following then and now purchase order. We have EnviroChem Incorporated for $11,000. This was a purchase by our operations department to purchase, I believe they were backpack sprayers and disinfectant for the school district.
I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's action items.
I'll second.
Any discussion, questions? I would just like to ask, Mr. Chambers, so the backpack foggers, so these are going to be used like for disinfecting school buses, recess
There were
equipment?
15 of them, so I would count 11 at the buildings and then op unit and transportation, yes.
Thank you.
And Aaron's shaking his head, so he
Yes?
probably knows more about it.
Okay, very good. All right. And then, any other questions, comments? Now, the public could submit a comment right now, and then we will answer it at the end?
And we'll provide them with the, yes, we'll provide them with the link towards the end, though.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Mr. Chambers, roll call?
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst,
Aye.
Mr. Hilbert,
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore,
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Thank you.
First item up is donations. It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the following donations to Medina City Schools, and both of these donations are for the food pantry here at the high school, which I did notice when I went through the high school today that they're in the process of restocking that, and the pantry was open and available to help our students with food throughout the summer, and will be as we head here into the school year as well. Number 2 is a memorandum of understanding for students placed in the Medina County Juvenile Detention Center. This is an annual item that's presented to the board. The teachers at the Juvenile Detention Center are Medina City School teachers. So what happens is the other county districts reimburse us for their portion of paying for education at the Juvenile Detention Center. Number 3 is policies. It is recommended that the Board of Education review for the second time with possible adoption the following revised policies. And these were all presented to the board at our last regular meeting and have all been vetted through our policy committee. Number 4, it is recommended that the Board of Education review for the second time with possible adoption the following new policy. This policy is required per the COVID-19 health and prevention guidance for Ohio K-12 schools, page 14. And we have a link here actually within the item if anybody wants to look that up. This mask policy was a bit fast-tracked compared to what we normally do in terms of policy and review within our policy committee. This is a mandated policy, and that's why it was fast-tracked. That needs to be in place before students return to our buildings. Number 5, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the agreement between the Medina City School District and Medina Hospital for its life support team to provide standby coverage for the 2020 home varsity football games. And this agreement is at no cost and is provided by Medina Hospital. They are donating their services. Number 6, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the agreements that students placed at Evolve Academy will be provided educational services for the Medina City schools for the districts listed. It's nice to see a healthy list of schools and that we're able to provide this type of service to school districts, not just here in Medina County, but around the area as well. The Evolve Academy has really come a long way under Mr. Leatherman's leadership, and it is a self-sufficient school. So they bring in their own income through having these schools sign up. And that pays the staff over at Evolve as well as materials and things like that. Number 7, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the agreement between the Medina City Schools and a parent or parents for the parents to provide transportation for their child or children with special needs to the school of the children's attendance for the 2021 school year. Payment is in lieu of transportation. And these type of items do come up every once in a while. Typically, it's when a student is placed per their IEP at another school. Oftentimes, these agreements will save us money because it means we're not sending a bus and a bus driver out there. My computer just froze, so I'm just waiting for it to come back. Number 8. I don't need paper. Number 8, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreement for the 2021 school year. And this is for tuning and repairs of pianos within the district. This is also an annual item that's recommended to the board. We want to make sure we keep our instruments in good order. And number 9, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreements for the 2021 school year. These are special ed agreements per student's individual IEPs. This also includes pass-through money through Medina Christian Academy for special education services as well. Number 10, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreement for the 2021 school year with extended school year services if needed during the summer 2021. This is for music therapy enrichment. Again, this is per student's IEPs, and this is an item we've worked with them before that has been on the agenda. And finally, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following personnel recommendations pending completion of all required paperwork and licensure through our Human Resources Department. As we mentioned earlier, Mr. Harrison is the top item on here. He will be missed by not just our staff, but our students as well, as he served as both an athletic director as well as high school principal over his approximately 10 to 12 years within the district. But we will be seeing him still, as Ms. Pavlik had mentioned, and I work regularly with superintendents across the county, so I anticipate I'm still going to have the opportunity to work with him in a different capacity. In addition, we do have a retirement on the agenda tonight. Jacqueline Palinchik is retiring from Medina City Schools in September with a total of 30 years of service to Medina City Schools. Jackie originally worked for a year in the 70s as a Medina City Schools crossing guard for heritage students and subbed in the high school cafeteria in the 80s. In 1993, she started working as a cafeteria server at Fenn. In 2000, she also began to drive a bus for Medina City Schools. In 2001, she moved to be a server at the newly opened H.G. Blake Cafeteria. For the rest of her time here, she has served lunch at Blake in between transporting students to and from school. We wish Jackie all the best in retirement and thank her for her years of service, a very dedicated career to the districts and the students of Medina City Schools. Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to accept the superintendent's action items.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Aaron, do we need something for Chris as the interim principal on the personnel?
We do not. Chris still serves the district as assistant superintendent.
Okay.
She is not the principal of the high school. She's just serving the capacity as the assistant superintendent.
So she's gonna do both.
Yes, we're hoping that it's just for a few weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
I've got a couple questions regarding the agreement with the Juvenile Detention Center. Just curious, that daily rate that we bill to the respective districts, is that typically enough to cover the teachers that we have placed there? It is. And then a question about the Evolve agreement. As soon as I can find it here. on page 2, regarding Black River Schools, it also mentions Hudson Schools, and I'm assuming that's an error.
Well, Hudson was listed down below.
There's a separate agreement in there with Hudson, but the one for Black River,
Yeah, it should read Black River.
I can't even find it now. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it says, enters into a contract for admission of students listed below at the Hudson City Schools.
Yep, we'll have to strike the Hudson out of there and make it Black River. It is signed at the bottom by the superintendent at Black River.
That's all I have.
Mr. Sable, I have a question, and I may be confusing this or thinking of something else, but regarding the agreement with the, for the LST at the varsity games, in the past, did we also have services for our junior varsity and freshman games, an ambulance there?
Yeah, we did approximately 3 years ago. We haven't the last several seasons. And the reason why is because they don't have the capacity in order to provide those services at all of those events. We are fortunate in our community, though, where we have safety forces and hospitals very close by. So there's a fairly quick response time.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. Chambers?
Yes, Ms. Pavlik,
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst,
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg,
Aye.
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.
And the last item on here is delay in compensation. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve Superintendent Sable's and Treasurer Chambers' requests as presented at the July 27th board meeting to delay their contracted compensation increases effective August 1st, 2020, until such time as the Board of Education awards raises to the administrators upon the recommendation of the superintendent.
I would like to make a motion to accept the item H, action item H. Superintendent?
I'll second.
Any comments, questions? Hearing none, Mr. Chambers?
Ms. Pavlik,
Aye.
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg,
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst,
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.
We've reached the public content of the meeting. Community members wishing to address the board are asked to abide by the following guidelines. Attendees shall register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. After those that have registered have spoken, if time allows, the board president will ask for public participation from all other attendees. Please state your name, address, and affiliation. Please keep comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Mr. O'Cole, has there been?
Yes, we do have Sarah Seaboon of 4470 Ridgewood Way.
And I just want to mention that people's voice will be on the broadcast, but their picture will not.
Sarah, your mic, you have to enable the grid and you're
Okay, let's see if I've got that now. Can you why a plan for a full return was presented on August 11th, when it appears that it's always been an impossibility and then altered every second. Obviously, there's significant social emotional deficit that comes with 6+ months of all of our kids learning at home. They've got limited ability to interact with their peers, especially even through Zoom. They're going to continue to lack the skills necessary to understand and manage their relationships, make decisions. I think the entire well-being of all of our students needs to be considered in these very unique times. So I guess my question or kind of my comment in asking our children to constantly adapt and be flexible is if there's any idea of when a possible hybrid model would be able to be determined by the high school, when we can expect maybe to know when that might get possible. Thank you so much.
Yep, and our goal is to let the community know about the direction we're heading regarding a possible hybrid model. We actually just had the committee meeting this afternoon at the high school, the building level. The next phase is to have the curricular leadership committee meeting to discuss that as well. I do want to emphasize that we are working towards having all of our students back, and that has been our goal. In terms of communication, I absolutely agree. We've known all along that we have a large high school. I'll take the blame. My orders to the team here at the high school was to do what they can to make it work for an entire student return. They did share with me early on concerns about having a full return of all of our high school students with the amount that we have. And what I told them is I wouldn't consider a potential hybrid model until we really took a good look at having all of our students return. We've been working on a very short time frame in terms of state mandates in order to make these decisions. I know that's very frustrating. Believe me, it's frustrating for us as well. Sometimes we literally are having to change directions with a decision that's made at the state level on a weekly basis. Fortunately, that's settled down a little bit. Just to share, though, that some of the work that went into potentially bringing all of our students back, we would have to set up tables within the gymnasium on the balconies. We'd have to provide food services through the concession stand over there by the gymnasium. We would also have to set up lunch tables in the PAC area. That would require the purchasing of additional tables or the rental of tables, which we looked into both. We even collected spare lunch tables from around the district in order to move them here to the high school to utilize them in order to have the appropriate distancing. And that doesn't even account for our study halls. That's just lunches I'm talking about. Study halls are probably even a larger concern. We have study halls that have 300 plus students in them. So finding a way to adequately socially distance them, and then it's not just socially distancing them because we have a lot of room there in the PAC, but it's then sanitizing the chairs, the seats, the tabletops, desks, whatever it might be, before the next class comes in, which is a major challenge. And what parents and students are going to see in most of the classrooms is teachers will be going around spraying their tabletops. If you have 20, 25 tables or students in a classroom, that's much more manageable for a teacher to do between classes. With a study hall, it's just not possible with 300 and that teacher needing to get to their next class. So these are all the discussions that we're having right now, and trying to find ways to work around some of these roadblocks. The plan is to have our students return. Ideally, we'd like to have them all return, but we're going to continue to work through some of these roadblocks and see what some solutions are that we can come up with. But I am anxious to hear what our leadership curriculum team is going to have to say, as that group has been very involved in all of our plans since the spring.
Mr. O'Cole is there. That's it. At this time, I make a motion to move into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, or compensation of a public employee or official.
Second.
Okay. We will be inviting Dr. Qualick in to executive session along with Mr. Sable and Mr. Chambers. And there will be no action taken after executive session.
Ms. Pavlik,
Aye.
Mr. Hilbert,
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst,
Aye.
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
and Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.